Hey everybody, and welcome back to another severe storm film or weather forecast. In this forecast, we have a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. Without further ado, taking a look at our jet stream across the United States, you can see here, this piece of energy here is a very strong cold front that is coming across the plain states and upper Midwest at this hour, and that is causing lots of showers and thunderstorms and even severe weather in areas like Nebraska and Kansas, where all that wind shear is going ahead of the cold front. Meanwhile, over here we have much weaker winds aloft, so those thunderstorms are just generalized and just sub-severe overall. They do produce heavy rain at times though, so continue to keep an eye on that, of course. But as we head into the daytime hours tomorrow for your Monday, we're likely still going to continue to see this front slowly moving off towards the south and east, all right? This is likely going to have, like I said before, some decent cold air advection behind it, so we will likely see that severe weather threat continuing into the daytime hours tomorrow, especially across the areas I just circled where that shear is really overlapping. And then as we head in towards Tuesday's a bit harder to forecast because this is when it starts to get access to some Gulf moisture, and when that happens, you know that's going to start to develop this big batch of rain ahead of the cold front, all right? So it just depends on how long this batch of rain lasts for. If it moves out, we could have a strong thunderstorm threat across this area or even a severe thunderstorm threat. But if that batch of rain stays over these areas, I mean, we're just going to be seeing some beneficial rain widespread from the Ohio Valley back into the Northeast, all right? So a couple scenarios that could pan out on Tuesday, but if we do happen to get some clearing, strong to severe storms will be possible, especially in areas like the Ohio Valley and back up into the Northeast. As we head into the daytime hours on Wednesday, no severe weather expected at this point. We're going to see a ridge set up down here, which is going to keep these areas relatively quiet. Over here, we will likely be running the risk for some showers and storms across areas like the Intermountain West, as well as the western United States. We could even see some mountain snow, which is normal for them this time of year. Meanwhile, over here, we'll likely have a big bucket of cold air falling in as we head in towards this time frame. Going into the day on Thursday, still no severe weather expected, just lots of cold air coming into the United States. It is going to feel like fall for a lot of these areas, especially the further north you are. And then as we take it into the daytime hours on Friday, our next big storm system, or at least signs of one, starts to enter the western United States, all right? Notice here that this has some really strong wind energy aloft with it, so this is probably going to be a decent atmospheric river event for areas like California and areas east. As we take it in towards the daytime hours on Saturday of next week, notice here how we have a 540 contour in Canada. This shows a blizzard over here, all right? I don't know if we get a blizzard over here, but it is something to keep an eye on there. All things for sure, though, this is going to be a very strong cold front, all right? It's already cold here in the west, all right? But watch what this does as we head into Sunday and Monday, all right? This goes right over the Rockies and makes a beeline for the Ohio Valley and upper Midwest, all right? This is going to be a severe weather maker if this verifies, all right? We need to watch anywhere in this area. It is 8 days out, so things are bound to change, but with this high pressure system here yanking up moisture, I mean, I would not be shocked to see it across this area as we head in towards that time frame. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on for sure. And then as we continue this time frame into, the middle of October, the weather is going to continue to stay active. This would be a huge severe weather event across this area if this were to happen, but it is very uncertain to say what the specifics will be at this time, given that it is 300 hours out. And taking a look at your precipitation trends over the course of the next couple weeks, like I said before, the longer we go out, the more uncertain it's going to be, but we can give you an overall trend of what it looks like. Notice here this evening we have a low pressure system way up here in Canada, like I said, dragging down a strong cold front, blowing in cold air from the northwest. This has a very big wind shift with it, and that is very valid that we have showers and thunderstorms ahead of this. this, all right? Working with that moisture, with that cold air clashing with this warm southerly wind across these areas, all right? So that's why we have that threat. But as we take it into the daytime hours tomorrow, like I said before, we'll likely need to continue to watch out for some sporadic severe storms across these areas, anywhere from Michigan back into the central plains, where damaging winds will be the primary threat, will be very isolated. And this is what I'm talking about for the day on Tuesday. All right, look at Tuesday morning, all right? All of this Gulf moisture being yanked up, crashing into this air mass, all right? This is a tropical system, or was a trying to develop tropical system, but this is going to connect with this front, and what that's going to do is that's going to bring a big slug of rain into areas of the Ohio Valley Tuesday morning, all right? That is going to limit the instability, but the question mark is, do we see some clearing like this model is suggesting in between for, areas like Indiana, Ohio, back into Kentucky, all right? Because the front is still right here, all right? This is just, warm front convection that is lifting in. All right, so we could have this move out, and we could have some thunderstorms bubble up across the, northern Ohio region, southern Michigan, as well as even Indiana. So that's something to keep an eye on there. But like I said before, that batch of rain even is a bit more widespread, a bit more further west, and a bit more elongated. We will likely just have some beneficial rain, and it will likely be a washout all day for the day on Tuesday. All right, couple scenarios to keep an eye on there. Going into Wednesday, we're just talking about cold air across the eastern United States. All right, it's going to be very dry, very warm across the western United States. All right, or at least for October standards, as we have a little bit of ridging taking place, you can see here. And then as we take it into the daytime hours on Thursday, we start to bring in our next storm system. Notice here, like I said before, maybe some scattered showers, maybe a few thunderstorms in the, the rocky regions. And then as we head into the daytime hours on Saturday, this becomes a very strong 981 millibar storm system, all right? Like I said before, this is going to have a very strong cold front with it, all right? We still have a lot of cold air over here, though, so there's not really much of a difference, all right? This is probably going to build up some rain-snow mix across this area, all right? Like I said before, the model earlier tried to form a blizzard on the western side of this, but I don't think that's going to happen. All right, according to this model, this does actually get to a 974 millibar low in Canada, which is a bomb cyclone at this point, mind you. It's 976 millibars or lower, so that's definitely something that we're going to really be keeping our eyes on. This could be a really big wind event for areas like the upper Midwest, back into the southern plains, where we could have at least 30-mile-per-hour wind gusts synoptically. We could have severe thunderstorms popping off across the upper Midwest. That's definitely something to keep an eye on, or at least the threat maybe of some gusty showers, maybe some gusty winds embedded within that synoptic rain. And then as we head in towards this time frame, notice here this coastal low, all right? This coastal low is probably not going to be a significant system, but it will be something to watch. Any system this time of year is really something to watch. And then we take it in towards the longer term. This is when we start to get concerned for a bigger storm system around, perhaps the 14th, 15th, or 16th time frame. And you notice here that this forms severe thunderstorms from Iowa back into areas of Oklahoma with a very, very, very sharp warm front, meaning that the moisture is going to be very high behind the warm front and very low ahead of it. And you notice here as we head in towards Friday, October 17th into Saturday the 18th, this has a lot of rain across these areas, all right? Even severe weather extending up into here, all right? So like I said before, we're not going to focus on specifics. The overall trend is that we will likely be seeing a very big uptick in storm system activity, and those could certainly be severe weather makers as we head forward, in addition to rain, snow, and even wind makers as well. And lastly, we have a tropical system to talk about that could develop into our next hurricane. So let's take a look here at what the Ensemble Model Blend is thinking about this, all right? As we head into the day on Thursday morning, All right, well, Thursday morning, notice here that most ensembles have this system going right towards the Lesser Antilles. So you guys will really need to watch out, all right? This low pressure system is going to be very close. You can see how they're all clustered together. That is bad because they're in agreement. All right, so that's really something you guys got to be keeping your eyes on there. I did not mean to do that. Across areas like the Lesser Antilles. And then as we take it into Thursday afternoon, notice here how this has varying intensities. All right, there's a couple stragglers that put this out to sea. All right, but I think unfortunately the right idea is that the pattern supports a Lesser Antilles and Caribbean storm. All right, and you notice here how it actually, I did it again, how it actually does that as we head in towards this time frame. All right, you can see how some of them make landfall across the U.S. Virgin Islands and, you know, like I said before, the Lesser Antilles. All right, so there is just a lot of concern with this. All right, I'm not saying this is going to be, you know, like I said before, a Category 5 landfall or anything. I didn't say that, but, I mean, it's probably not going to be a Category 5. I will say, though, that this might be a low-end hurricane, maybe even a, you know, a Category 3 hurricane, maybe reaching major hurricane status, all right? So this would be a pretty strong storm, I would say, as it moves into the Caribbean Sea, all right? That would be bad. Watch what it does as we head beyond this, though, all right? This is for Bermuda, all right? This is about 220 hours out. This bombs out into a 970 at least millibar low, all right? Some of these have, you know, 990s and stuff, so it's hard to say right now. But there are some stragglers that put it down to 956 here, all right? And it could be way over here toward Bermuda, all right? So that's something to keep an eye on. Lesser Antilles as we head in towards late this week, which is a big concern. I would start preparing, as well as Bermuda as we head down the road. All right, everybody, that will wrap it up for this video. I'm Severe Storm Filmer. I will see you guys again soon.